This is the High School Football Preview Show with Mike Wenmacher, Tim Schweitzer, Steve Bridge, and Derek Paris on 97.7 and 970 WMAY, Springfield's news and talk.
It is the High School Football Preview Show, Week 2 of the playoffs. I am Mike Wenmacher, joined as always by the esteemed panel. You can hear him on the Rochester Rockets broadcast, Steve Bridge. You can hear him on the SHG Cyclone broadcast, Tim Schweitzer. And you can see him everywhere with all the sports going on nowadays from Channel 1450 is Derek Paris. Gentlemen, appreciate your time as always. We had 3 winners for the teams we cover here at the Woodward Group of Stations. We'll begin with Rochester, though. I don't think the result was shocking. I think everyone thought Rochester was going to win that ball game as Taylorville against pretty easily. But I think the first quarter score may have been the most shocking thing. Steve, how did that all come about for the Rockets in that ball game?
Well, it came about because special teams were just special. So the Rockets score on a punt return for a touchdown in the first quarter. Corbin Gregory then does the magic again with a kickoff return, 99 yards for a touchdown. And they also blocked a Taylorville punt, gave him the ball at the 3-yard line. Rochester made a fairly short work out of that and got a touchdown on that drive as well. So there's really 2 special teams play directly result in touchdowns. Another special teams play sets up a touchdown, but also in there, think about this. The Rockets, Mike, had an 80-yard touchdown drive that was done in fewer plays than the touchdown drive they had after blocking the punt and getting the ball from the 3-yard line. So everything worked really well on Friday night for the Rockets against the Taylorville Tornadoes.
And obviously the score gets the kind of praise, but talk to us about defensively for the Rockets against a Taylorville team that really liked to run the football.
They did. Look, they didn't run the ball very much against the Rockets, and they kind of got forced into a passing situation. Did have a big 73-yard touchdown pass that put the Tornadoes on the board just once in the game. Happened there in the first half, and that pass play was directly answered by one of the Rocket special teams plays. Right after that, they returned the kick for 99 yards and the touchdown. So that kind of squashed any kind of unfortunately good feelings there on the Taylorville side. But the defense did a good job. Pressure the quarterback just enough, stop the run, obviously just enough. What they were really, really good at is what they need to be better at as this playoff season rolls along, is limiting then third down conversions for the offenses that they're battling. And they did that against Taylorville. I think maybe 1 first down is all they had. Option there for them to kind of continue drives. And as we talk about their upcoming game against Waterloo, Mike, that'll be very important that they make sure that they can stop drives against the Waterloo Bulldogs.
Yeah, it's a simple game sometimes. Get off the field on third down, stay on the field on third down on offense, and you're doing pretty good for yourself. Tim, we'll go to the SHG Cyclones. They have to go on the road, beat a team for the second time this year, and they get the job done against Quincy Notre Dame. What was the biggest thing for you coming out of that ball game for the Cyclones?
Mike Sager-Griffin, with their rematch against QND, really played well in all 3 phases. Early in the game, the defense was really good. They got QND into a couple of 3-and-outs, which is very unusual for the Raiders, especially on their home field. And then the Cyclones scored a couple early, and instead of being down 12-0 like they were when they hosted QND, they were up 14-0 after the first quarter. They could then play ball control, which the offense did a great job of doing. They just decided to focus on running the ball, and Cameron Brinkman, the junior quarterback, ran great. 15 carries, 159 yards, scored a touchdown, threw a touchdown pass. And then special teams really good. 90-yard kickoff return by Javonis Lunford. And Drew Ward, who was hurt in the Rochester game, played great on defense and kicked 2 field goals in the fourth quarter that helped seal the win.
And now they move on as well. We'll get to that second round matchup that they have with Carterville. Before we get there, though, Derek, I want to kind of get your thoughts on the Rochester game and the SHG game before we talk a little bit about Glenwood and Joliet Catholic. What did you see from those two games and the wins for the Rockets and the Cyclones?
Yeah, after a long, busy week of travel, going everywhere last week, it was nice on Friday night to be home by 8 o'clock, which was unheard of. I mean, just a dominant performance in the first quarter. And I think that, that's going to go a long way to helping them, get healthy in some spots and just kind of not only increase that depth that they have at certain positions, but get those, second and third string guys some valuable time in the playoffs, but also, rest up the guys who are maybe playing, both ways are going to be this week. So I think that was huge for Rochester, just to be able to come out and execute so well and not have to waste any time, or, just make sure that they got the job done quickly. And as for SHG, I mean, it was a really tough draw to have to go play QND and then go over there. And, just the way that they handled business to me was impressive. They came out and they got an early lead, which they didn't do, the first time those two teams played. So I think that helped them just kind of settle in on the road and understand that, playing ahead is definitely going to help them. And to be able to run the ball was huge. Obviously, Drew Ward being a little banged up, they were kind of careful with him in spots, but I mean, Andrew Walters had some great plays. So I just think that there's a lot of different options on the SHG team, and for them to go over and get a hard fought win really kind of proves to them that, yeah, even though they're banged up, they're a really good team right now.
You want to talk about hard fought wins? The Glenwood Titans get a 17-12 victory over Joliet Catholic, and it was basically heart of Big Ten country football. It was not for the weak of heart. I mean, you know what you're going to get with Joliet Catholic. And talking to Coach Hay earlier today, he was just impressed with his team's ability to match that physicality. There was a lot of talk about maybe, Grady Mueller getting 30 carries. Were they being vanilla because East St. Louis played Friday night and they may be there to scout? I just think it was, you're going to match up against Joliet Catholic, go strength for strength. And Grady Mueller he's gotten some carries, but never had that workhorse game yet. And you got to get your main back lathered up if you're going to make a deep run. Also, I'm going to sound like a broken record, like Steve and Tim, but special teams. Tristan Swint hits a field goal that makes it a 5-point game as opposed to a 3-point game. And now Joliet Catholic has to score a touchdown to win the game instead of just a field goal. So that was important. And his ability to pin teams back deep on the kickoff as well. Coach mentioned that. Field position and execution fundamentals. I know it sounds boring, but that's what it comes down to in the playoffs. So the Titans get that hard-fought victory. And their round 2 opponent is not any easier. And we'll get to that momentarily, but let's get to the round 2 matchups, starting with the Friday night one. Steve, we go back to you. Rochester takes on Waterloo, who beat Mount Zion. What do the Rockets have on their hands against this Waterloo team?
Well, a team that's going to be really good at running the football. Not for the faint of heart, again, probably between Rochester and Waterloo, Mike. Pretty good defensively, too. They really forced Mount Zion into a game they weren't comfortable playing. Just put a lot of pressure on this Mount Zion quarterback a week ago, Stocks, the same way that Rochester put a lot of pressure on that Mount Zion quarterback. But for the Waterloo offense, Mike, rushing yard total so far this season in a handful of games, 373, 292, 408, 420, 282. Those are rushing totals out of single games, not just compilations worth of games. And so the Waterloo Bulldogs put the ball on the ground a lot. They run it a lot. It's not so much misdirection and trickery. They'll just run a lot of ace back with a wing. They'll run some kind of old school T formations, and it's basic, but it's hard to stop. You almost know exactly what's going to be coming at you. Still with some counters and a little bit of misdirection along the line with some blockers, but it is old school football, and Waterloo is just going to be pretty. They will let you know what they're ready to do, Mike, and the Rochester Rockets are just going to have to stop it.
Well, defensively, Waterloo, what do they do so well? You said they made Mount Zion uncomfortable. What are the coaching staff from the Rockets seeing on that side of the ball from the Bulldogs?
And that's a good question. I don't quite know exactly how. I mean, Mount Zion kind of shot themselves in the foot a couple of different times in that game to be put in the position in which they were, where they just didn't score that many points. Watching a lot of the other games that Waterloo has played, it's a basic. Again, this is simple football stuff, but they're doing it really well. There's not a lot to kind of hide or kind of trick anybody on this. The defense is just a stout, steady, basic defense, and they were able to match up very well against the Mount Zion Braves, stop J.C. Anderson, stop the Harvey kid who had really torched Rochester in week 2 in that game. And so Waterloo just closed all that down, and Mount Zion was left without the ability to do much. So this will be an old school football game. We love football on Fridays, and we love old school football matchups, and that's what this one is. It's kind of maybe a little bit like what you saw last week between Glenwood and JCA.
Yes, definitely. We're going to be a lot of stuff going on the ground for sure. Before we move on to you, Tim, and the Cyclones, Derek, your thoughts on the Waterloo-Rochester matchup?
Yeah, I think they definitely have the Rochester, defensive attention in terms of, coming up and beating Mount Zion. Obviously that, says something, but go back a few years ago when SHG went down there and, almost lost that game where Waterloo had them beat for most of the game. Ty Lott found a way to win that game for them, and then they go on to win the state title. But that just speaks to, how good this Waterloo program is. They're a perennial power down there, and so they're always going to be a problem in 4A, and Rochester, SHG, now Jacksonville, even any of those teams, they understand that this is one of those teams that you're going to have to go through if you want to make a run in 4A. So like Steve said, you're going to have to stop the run, and I think one of the keys may be getting a guy like Jory Myron back, who didn't have to play last week, who's been banged up for a while. But I mean, if you can get a guy like that back who is a big piece on defense and be able to put him in there with Connor Broughton and Xander Bridge and those guys, it's definitely going to help you on defense, try to stop that run.
So we move from the Rochester Rockets Friday night to Saturday in 4A, Tim, as the SHG Cyclones take on a Carterville team that is undefeated. What have you seen from Carterville? What are you hearing from the Cyclones as it pertains to their opponent?
The Carterville Lions are good. They're a run-first team. They've rushed for about 2,500 yards plus, and they've passed for less than 1,000 yards. So they want to run, and their best running back is really good, 1,350-some yards. Jonathan Miller is his name. He's superb, but they were running him a little too much early in the season. So at mid-season, their head coach, Brett Dial, decided to implement the wishbone. For those unfamiliar with the wishbone formation, Google it. They've got 3 backs and a quarterback, and the ball could go anywhere. So the Cyclones defense is going to have to be really aware, because we don't see much wishbone. We don't see any wishbone in the CS8. So be prepared for a run-first Carterville team. And defensively, they're really aggressive. I put them, in terms of aggressiveness, in the class of Rochester's defense. Sacred Heart Griffin's going to have their hands full, and Carterville is not a gimme at 10-0. They're really good.
Derek, your thoughts on SHG and Carterville before we move to Glenwood East St. Louis?
Yeah, just to echo what Tim said, I mean, when you're playing a run-heavy team like that, you're going to have to be big and physical up front. And, SHG has passed a lot of those tests this year. They've been able to compete with a bigger Chatham team. And, just the same thing with Rochester. They did fine on the line. So, I mean, I think it's one of those things where, yeah, they're definitely going to be tested and see how healthy they are. But, I mean, when you can get a team like that and, if Cam Brinkman could score a couple quick touchdowns and take the lead, that throws their whole game plan off. So that's going to be big, is, getting out to an early start. SHG, being able to go down and score. Last week, a couple of times you saw Drew Ward have to kick field goals. You really want to score touchdowns as much as you can, especially early against an undefeated team like that on the road, to where you make them do things that they don't really want to do and maybe have to pass the ball a little bit.
I'm sure it's not lost on anyone here locally what looms ahead if both teams are able to get the victories, one on Friday, one on Saturday, a possible rematch between those two schools in the quarterfinals there. We will move on to 6A on Saturday, where the Glenwood Titans will take on the East St. Louis Flyers. So, just Joliet Catholic, then East St. Louis, a pretty easy run through 6A, as it were. You knew they were talking to Coach Hay. Eventually, you're going to have to play East St. Louis. It's 6A, you're in the South bracket. You're going to have to play East St. Louis. The most interesting thing to me was, I mentioned on the recap of kind of Joliet Catholic, of a lot of individuals saying, well, they were vanilla because East St. Louis may be there to scout. I think Glenwood, and I'll get the panel's thoughts on this too, I think Glenwood was kind of using that as a trial run of, can we grind out a victory? Yes, they have a lot of skill guys, and I'm not saying it's going to all of a sudden turn into the wishbone, but I think talking to Coach Hay, the way they feel they can beat East St. Louis is not trying to get into a shootout or a track meet with them, but grind them down and take their shots when available is going to be how they get a roadmap to pulling off the upset. A team that has beaten them a couple times. They have very good programs. And the funny part is Glenwood's the number 1 seed, but man, you would think they are the David against this Goliath of East St. Louis for certain. So, gentlemen, I'm going to go around the panel real quick and just kind of get your thoughts on this ball game. Derek, I'll start with you.
The biggest thing, I think, like you said, keep the ball away from them. If you're able to do that, you keep yourself in the game and don't let them score. I think defensively and size-wise, Glenwood's right there. That was kind of the thing on the sideline last week. A lot of the talk was, how big JCA was coming down and how big their linemen were and how Glenwood was going to struggle with that. Well, that was not the case. Glenwood was bigger than them, and they really proved that. And like you said, in a grinded out type of game, that seemed to be big for Glenwood last week against the JCA team. So I think you're going to have to win the battle up front. As you know, they have talented athletes. It's just a matter of, keeping yourself in the fight, I think, is the biggest thing, because this Glenwood team has played some really great games where they had to play a full game, even an overtime game. So I think you just have to, find a way to stay in the fight and then see what happens in the end when you're at home and you have 38 seniors who have been there and done that and understand what it takes.
Tim, your thoughts on Glenwood and East St. Louis?
For those that don't know, the Flyers lost 3 games, one in New Jersey, one at Las Vegas, and the other in Florida. They haven't lost in Illinois. They probably won't lose in Illinois unless Glenwood does, as Derek suggests, control the ball. Do not give up big plays. Glenwood was with them for a half last year at Titan Stadium, and then the big plays really hurt the Titans in the second half of that game. And there's no doubt Colton Knadler and his crew have the capability of winning this game. I don't think I'm the only one going out on a limb to say East St. Louis is the favorite, but I smell an upset for the Titans on Saturday.
Hear it from Tim right there. And just to kind of back up Tim's thoughts, I was looking at the numbers. In games against Illinois teams, East St. Louis is outscoring the opponents 346-27. So just to kind of let you know, Steve, I'll give you kind of the last word on this game before we go back around and recap.
Well, I watched them lose to one Illinois team twice in state championships. Cary Grove has had East St. Louis's numbers in state title games, and Cary Grove handled the ball, controlled the clock, and played really good defense. Glenwood can do all of those things. They can put themselves in a position to beat the East St. Louis Flyers. It's just the same way Cary Grove did in a pair of 6A state title games over the past 2 years.
Yeah, the roadmap is there, but can the Titans follow it? That'll be the question on Saturday. So, gentlemen, we'll end with the question we have been during these past couple of weeks here. Steve, we'll start with you. The Rochester Rockets advance if?
Well, they advance if Connor Broughton and Dylan DeRocher and Xander Bridge and Wesley Sherradden and Connor Maltby all do their job up front and really contribute to shutting down that Waterloo run game. And those linebackers are there to make great tackles, and they continue to put out Waterloo on 3 and outs. In the last 7 games, Mike, the Rochester Rocket defense is now 75% on third downs. That needs to be at least that good here on Friday night for the Rockets to beat Waterloo and advance on to the 3rd round.
Tim, the SHG Cyclones advance if?
Block and tackle, Mike, and bring the intensity. I think this Carterville team is going to be very intense when they arrive in town on Saturday afternoon. Cyclones need to match it and exceed it.
And Derek will go with you. The Glenwood Titans advance if?
They stay in the fight. They just got to stay in the fight. It's a long game. They grinded it out last week. They found a way and execute. Do your job, just your job, and make sure you do it.
Echoing Tom Thibodeau from the Bulls ears, do your job. Gentlemen, always appreciate the time. And Steve, where can people find the Rochester game on Friday night?
We'll be on 97.7, 970 WMAY on all of those apps and WMAY.com.
For the Glenwood game, it will be on WMAY as well, WMAY.com and the WMAY app. Tim, where can people find the SHG game on Saturday?
It's a 1:30 kick, and it'll be on Sports Radio 1450, 92.3 FM at sportsradio1450.com and on the Sports Radio 1450 app.
And Derek, you haven't figured out the cloning technology yet, but where will you be this weekend?
Not yet. I plan to be in Chatham for the Glenwood game on Saturday. And one note, I just want to say, Coach Garber's already planning on, hopefully bringing back a state trophy to show off at halftime of that game and fire up the Glenwood crowd a little bit more.
Excellent. Well, guys, appreciate your time as always. Safe travels for those who are traveling this weekend. Best of luck to all the teams. Have a great broadcast. We'll be back next week with the High School Football Preview Show.
Catch the High School Football Preview Show live every Friday night at 6 on 97.7 and 970 WMAY. Listen to the podcast and watch the replay online at WMAY.com.